Hi everyone, this is Miss Stam, and today we're going to review the scientific method and make a foldable. You should have seen a PowerPoint last week going over the steps of the scientific method. You should have a template provided to you by your teacher that looks like this. It should have lines on both sides. Our outside cover is going to be this side. Make sure to go ahead and put your name and your science teacher's name on the paper. This way, your foldable will be turned into the correct science teacher and it doesn't get lost. Alright, the very first section of our foldable and the first step of the scientific method is to ask a question. So go ahead and write, ask a question. This is the first step of the scientific method. The second step is to do your research. So write, do your research. Now I am also going to include an arrow from this step to the next to remind myself that these steps flow from one to the other. After do your research, you're going to form a hypothesis. So go ahead and write, form a hypothesis. Form a hypothesis. Once again, I'm going to draw my arrow. Once you've formed your hypothesis, you need to test your hypothesis. You need to write, test your hypothesis. Alright, drawing my arrows. Once you've tested your hypothesis, you will collect and analyze your data. Collect and analyze the data. Once you've collected and analyzed your data, you will draw your conclusions. Draw conclusions. And lastly, once you've drawn your conclusions, you will report your results. Report your results. Now make sure you have all of these written down on the front. Ask a question, do your research, form a hypothesis, test your hypothesis, collect and analyze data, draw conclusions, and report your results. Once you have this written on the front page, you can turn to the other side and we'll write the information on the inside. The very first thing has to do with asking a question. Just to elaborate, you need to ask, what do you want to know? How can science help you answer that question? So what do you want to know, and how can science help? So that had to do with asking a question. Following asking a question, you do your research. So while researching, you ask, has anyone asked this before? Research similar questions. And ask others for advice. Give you a second to get caught up. Alright, once you've done your research, you now need to form a hypothesis. When you form a hypothesis, you make a prediction. And there's a special type of statement that we will be using when we make our predictions. We say, if we do this, then this will happen, because, and we give our reason why it is going to happen. So that is forming your hypothesis, making your prediction, if, then, and because statements. Once you've formed your hypothesis, you need to test your hypothesis. In order to test it, you have to experiment. Plan your experiment. Then you have to do the experiment. Remember that the experiment is going to involve things like independent variables and dependent variables. That's testing your hypothesis. When conducting your experiment, you collect and analyze your data. You need to record your data. Your data is not any good unless you record it. You can have quantitative data, which is numbers, and you can have qualitative data, which is words or observations. Now, one thing that I do to help me remember quantitative and qualitative is I remember the N in quantitative is like the N in numbers, and the L in qualitative is like language, which is words. Now, once you've recorded your data, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, you need to think, does it match the hypothesis? give you a second to write this down. So once you've collected and analyzed your data, you need to draw your conclusion. You need to ask yourself, was the hypothesis correct? Was your hypothesis correct? What did you learn? And lastly, what questions do you have now? A lot of times when you conduct an experiment, your results may not be quite what you expected, and you may develop new questions to further test your hypothesis. And lastly, once you've drawn your conclusions, you need to report your results. What good is doing all of this work if you don't tell somebody? You need to publish your work, whether it's in a paper or a presentation or a science fair project. Alright everybody, this should complete your foldable. If you didn't get it finished, you can always watch this video again. Don't worry about cutting your foldable yet. You can do that in science. We'll give you the scissors and you can cut the front just like you did your chemical change foldable. Make sure that your name and science teacher are on this so that it gets back to us. Thanks. Have a great day.